right, so welcome to Church for All Nations, Culture Impact Team, City Council Forum. We're so privileged to have a vast number of those that are running for City Council. So for those who don't know, my name is Ken Davis. I oversee or head the government mountain for our Culture Impact Team. And really interested to hear what all these amazing folks have to say to you tonight. And hopefully you're going to be ready to ask some questions. So I want to help you before we come to the Q&A portion at the end as to how you will go about asking your question. Your question must be pointed at the person who is in your council district, your city district. If you do not know what your city district is, I would like everyone to please quickly pull out their mobile devices. I'm going to talk quickly here, but try and follow along. All right, so I want you to go to Go Vote Colorado. When you get there, because you're in a church, just say amen. All right, and if you are, or is everyone in the room registered? Are you already a registered voter? Okay, so then you can go to, I think it says find my registration. Manage my registration. Thank you, Linda. I was giving Linda these instructions and I forgot them. So manage my resignation. Manage my registration. And then it will take you to a screen where you'll put in your name, your date of birth, your zip code, I believe. And then you will search and you'll come to a page that's fairly long, but it'll start with your name, it'll have your voter ID, and if you go down a little further, you will see the city of Colorado Springs, and the district number will be there. So for instance, I live in District 6. So is that helpful for everyone? Unless you are, it looks like everyone in the room already knew their council district, except for me. So I appreciate that. So make sure you point your question at the person that is in your district. Or persons, that is correct. If you don't mind, how many of you up here actually have someone running opposed to you in your district? If you could just raise your hand. Someone that's here, someone that's in the room running against you, and he's pointing at the person that's running against him. And they decide to sit next to each other. It's novel. All right, so a couple announcements, and then I'm going to have, for those of you that don't know Dave Riffle, he and his wife actually lead our Culture Impact team. And so I'm going to have him come up and we're going to do a prayer and a pledge. As I've said in the past, you're in a church. In case you didn't notice when you walked in the building, there's a statue up front of David. Say it again. That's you. Dave, they lost you. Trust me, you're in there. And so there's a statue of David and Goliath with Goliath's head cut off. So you're in a church. So we are going to pray. A couple announcements about Culture Impact Team. This upcoming month, well, actually, we still have one more meeting this on the 24th for this month, and that's going to be, we're going to talk about critical race theory and 1619 Project. Please come back for that. On April 14th, we actually have a conservative school board members panel. All right, all those that are not conservatives just gave me the thumbs down like that lady from Arizona did when she walked up to, see, you saw that, didn't you? She walked up to Nancy Pelosi and said, $15 an hour? And on April 28th, we will actually have a panel from Turning Point USA. So if you know any young people, we want young people in the building for sure for that one. And so, Dave, if you don't mind coming up, and then after Dave has done the prayer and the pledge, I'll go over the rules and how this will go tonight.
Father God, we just thank you for the opportunity we have to worship you. And we thank you for a place we can come to learn even about how we can apply our values to our vote. So we thank you for what we're going to learn tonight, and we bless you in Jesus' name. Amen. Our flag is up here, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you.
Okay, real quick, agenda items. Do me a favor, if you've got a smartphone or a dumb phone or some type of phone that could possibly ring during this, please put it on silent, vibrate, airplane mode. I don't care. I just don't want to hear it. And I'm sure they don't either. They don't want to be disturbed when they're giving you such glorious answers to the 4 topics. So we're going to focus on 4 topics. They do not know the topics in which we are going to focus on, and this will be kind of a random drawing. Yep. So they're going to start, everyone, and we'll actually start with one and just go down the line. They're going to give an opening statement. Then after that, I will bring up the first topic. I will pull, or actually Vanna will pull. Vanna will pull from the bowl there one number, random number, and that person will be the first one to give their response to that. And then she will pull a second number. So we will not go in any order. It will be random. We're all good with that? As long as you're not first, right? Get a chance to hear someone else's thought. Oh, I think I can say something that'll twist that one a little bit. So be ready. And so we're gonna begin with opening statements. As I said, this one will go in order. We will start with number 1. That is Garfield. See, he did. I said, who wants to be first? He chose this seat. We didn't choose it for him. That's how that works. All right, Garfield, take it away.
Okay, I didn't expect this. Okay, my name is Dr. Garfield Johnson. I arrived here in 1993 with $50 in my pocket from Nassau, Bahamas. I grew up on the island of Andros, which is like 80 miles off the coast of Cuba. My great-grandparents were slaves that were brought from Africa to the Bahamas, and then my grandparents, they were indentured servants. We got our citizenship back in 1973, sorry. And then moving here, I arrived with $50 in my pocket. I completed 3 master's degrees, a doctorate, and I was a 2-time, I trained for 2 Olympics as an Olympic hopeful. I went into the Army, and I came back here, became a teacher. And now, what I want to do is, I want to work for you. I am your voice. Please, put me to work for you. I have the drive, tenacity, and I am here to show that to you tonight. And by answering these questions for you, I hope you believe me.
Hi, folks. My name is Justin Hermes. One of the greatest blessings I've had in life has been born here in Colorado Springs. It has helped shape my conservative values and made me the American patriot I am today. This is why I feel called to serve on City Council. I want to make sure we keep these conservative values at the forefront of our community. I also want to make sure Colorado Springs continues to thrive for years to come. Throughout this process, I'll knock on many doors, and I'll learn from the people in my district what matters most to them. I also believe there are many struggling industries that we need to support during this time. That is why I've self-funded my campaign. I also don't want to owe anyone any favors down the road, so that is a critical step too in the process, is not taking money up front. I also want to make sure the district's fairly represented. I think east of Union has been forgotten, and there's great assets such as the Citadel Mall and the Rustic Hills Shopping Center. I'm a proud American patriot. I love the American flag. I stand for the national anthem, and it feels like America in here tonight because we got no masks on. Appreciate that.
Good evening. Very happy to see you all. Thank you for coming out, and thank you for the opportunity. It is, in fact, an honor to be here this evening with you. My name is Jim Mason. I'm running for District 1, and I am running because I believe I'm the best qualified candidate in District 1. With all due respect to my opponents who I know of by reputation, or what I've read, and they're completely qualified, complete gentlemen, each and every one of them. But I think I'm the best qualified. Why am I running? I'm running because for the last 15 years, I have worked here in Colorado Springs at the grassroots level, serving on Colorado Springs School District 11 Board of Education as president, vice president, secretary, and now secretary again. I serve as a commissioner on the Colorado Springs Urban Renewal Authority Board. I work on, and I am chairman of a couple of scholarship programs here in the city. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Dave Donaldson, candidate for City Council District 1. Thank you to Church for All Nations for hosting this event, and thank you to all of you for turning out here tonight. 30 years ago, my wife and I and our 2-week-old daughter arrived in Colorado Springs. We fell in love with Colorado Springs and we started putting down roots. I spent 21 years in the Army. I was a Green Beret and then went on to become a physician assistant and spent 3 tours over in Iraq. After the Army, I practiced medicine here in Colorado Springs. I was a center director of a men's health clinic. We grew that clinic. We tripled the patient population there. We were very successful. I'm endorsed by the current city councilman, Don Knight, our 2 state senators that represent District 1, Paul Lundeen and Larry Liston, and other highly respected officials from that area. They've endorsed me because they know me, my values, and my priorities. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Carlson. Can I just say how nice it is to see everybody in person and not on Zoom right now? I was looking forward to this date. I'm running in District 1 as well, which represents the northwest part of Colorado Springs, for those of you unfamiliar. I am a Colorado Springs native, not many of us, so I'm proud to be a native. I grew up down south, went to Colorado College where I majored in economics. Most of my 20s, I actually commuted to Denver and worked for Colorado's largest company in a high-level engineering position. When I got tired of the commute, my wife and I decided to start our own business, and fast forward 8 years, we've got over 20 employees in 3 locations, and so it's been great to have experience both big and small. I am the president of the board for the Trails and Open Space Coalition, so our parks, trails, and open spaces is very important to me. I founded a scholarship in my late 20s, and I want to really work on promoting responsible growth in Colorado Springs.
Please hold. Can you hold? Really quick, if you don't mind, when you're speaking, do not stand. What happens is you rise up out of the lighting, and we can't, the cameras aren't getting a good angle.
Hi, my name is Art Glenn. I'm running for City Council District 3. 15 years ago, the military brought my family and me here to Colorado Springs, where we made it our permanent home. We were taken with the fact at that time that families were dedicated to seeing their kids achieve the same level of success that they have achieved themselves, if not better. Where neighbors were neighbors, and frankly, people were genuinely happy. I'm devoted to bringing those values back and reclaiming them. I'm opposed to recreational marijuana for the devastating impact it is having on our community. I'm devoted also to protecting America's mountain and our communities against the wildfires like we had last summer. I'm also dedicated to make sure that we have reliable and efficient and economical energy sources here. I'm Art Glenn, and I need your vote. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Randy Helms, and my decision to run for City Council District 2 is just an extension of the career choice I made 45 years ago. I want to continue to serve our community as I served our nation. I'm a proud graduate of your United States Air Force Academy, and I have over 40 years of leadership and management experience at the commanding officer, educator, and charitable organizational leader. I grew up in a family that understands service. My father started out as a police officer, became a small business owner. Later, he became a city council member and then mayor of my hometown. It was the Air Force Academy where I learned to love the city of Colorado Springs, as well as the young lady I married here at the Cadet Chapel, We've been married over 41 years. I look forward to representing you in District 2 as a principle-driven conservative, which is what District 2 needs and doesn't have. Thank you very much. Vote for Randy Helms. Thank you.
I'm Jay Inman. We've just found out a little while ago that we're not going to have a closing statement. So I want to do something that I've done at every one of these. For all the individuals up here running, these are all people who have stepped into the arena. It takes courage to do that. Most of us still have full-time jobs. And so for each individual here, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you peace as you use imagination and innovation to bless our city, to serve our citizens. I'm Jay Inman. I'm running for city council. I spent 20 years in the Army, around all over the world. My 4 main issues are marijuana, business, and by the way, I don't want us smoking it at all. Taxes and utilities. We've got to maintain a stable utilities grid before it costs too much.
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia Lupia and I am running for City Council District 3. I just want to say it has been my absolute privilege and my honor to get to interact with you, the people, because that's what this office is about. It is called public service, and it is about listening to the constituents to bring a real, true, reflective voice to our district and our city as a whole, not what the rest of the state or the county tells us that we should want. I am a constitutional conservative, a Christian, a homeschooler, and I have had the privilege of spending 21 of my 25 years of life in the shadow of Cheyenne Mountain and Pikes Peak. I am here to listen, I am here to engage, I am here to represent you, the people, in Colorado Springs, District 3. So I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to show us how much you care about your city, because it is our city, and together we continue to make it a wonderful place to grow up and a wonderful place to progress. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Mary Elizabeth Fabian, and I'm a small business owner. I'm the wife of a 100% disabled veteran, a mom of 3 gorgeous children. I have founded charities here in this community because I so believe that service doesn't begin here behind this table or when we get elected to City Hall. We should have been serving you for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And that's exactly what I have been doing as a small business owner, as a charity founder, as a founder of Mountain View Academy, a D49 charter school. I'm running for District 5 because I understand the importance of representation, and our district has been underrepresented. And I'm asking that each and every one of you today support me and pray for me. Thank you.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. My name is Regina English. I am a candidate for District 4. I am currently the Vice President for Harrison School District 2 Board of Education because it was important to me that all young people were set up for success and that all young people were treated equally within our educational system. So how can we do that? It's by creating equity through policy. And now I'm running for city council because of the passion and love that I have for kids and families and my consistency in my decision making. I plan to take that to the city and be an even louder voice for my constituents. For me, it's people over power and people over politics. You can learn more about me at reginaenglish.com. I'm also an advocate for education, and I believe in modeling and paving the way. So in 2022, I will be Dr. Regina English. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm David Noblet. I've lived in Colorado Springs for 35 years. I've been in my district for just under 30 of those years, back when the streets used to be both clean and smooth. I think some of the issues that we have in our community are attributed to growth, and although I'm a supporter of growth, I believe that it needs to be responsible. that it needs to both pay for itself and pay for the impact that it brings to this community. I love Colorado Springs. My family lives here. My daughter lives here. We plan to make this our lifelong home. And I believe that the fundamentals of government that are their responsibilities, I'm clearly understanding of those, especially public safety, is the fact that I've spent 40 years of my life doing that, 25 of them protecting this city. And I also believe in the accountability that the citizens need to have for the representatives who actually do that, which is to represent the people and the concerns that they have about the concerns of growth and public safety. I greatly appreciate your time tonight, and we definitely can make Colorado Springs better. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carly Van Arnhem. I'm a candidate for District 5 City Council. Thank you all so much for being here. It's really great to see so many people getting involved in our local politics, and thank you for everybody behind this table for your courage and your dedication to our city. I am a Colorado native. I earned my master's degree, my master's in business administration, right here at UCCS. For the last 12 years, my husband and I have been raising our son and running and buying small businesses right here in Colorado Springs. We own small businesses and we manage small businesses. Throughout my educational background, my business background, and my real life experience, I have gained skills necessary to help develop and implement legislation while analyzing data from a legal, a regulatory, an operational, and a financial standpoint. My hope is to bring this skill set along with a pragmatic and collaborative attitude to our city council to help us accomplish sustainable and responsible growth and impact positive change for our city. We live in one of the most beautiful cities in the country. My family and I plan on living here forever, and we thank you for your support.
All right. Thank you all. That was fantastic. I'll tell you what's really fantastic is you clearly have a very intelligent group of people up here because I didn't have to give them any instructions about the microphones. They just kind of did it on their own. I greatly appreciate not giving me more work. So with that, we will begin with our first topic. Vanna, who's going first? Because the first topic is utility board responsibilities. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to give a response. First topic, utility board responsibilities. Missing.
So he just gets to go and then we'll do the next one.
Missing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Mason.
Not Mason. Missing. All right. Jim. Mask up. Mask down. Let's get it going.
Left and right. The Utilities Board responsibility as a council member. I happen to know a little bit about what the utilities do and what the board members do based on my service with the Urban Renewal Authority Board. I would say this. I would say to you, ladies and gentlemen, that every one of the candidates running for a district seat are educated, can read and write, are independent thinkers, know how to think, not what to think. I think each of us would be able to do the study, perform the study, use our subject matter experts, and serve you and the utilities very well as a board member. I said that because in receiving a briefing about 3 weeks ago from Utilities CEO, there are many challenges awaiting our city from a utility standpoint. I think it was alluded to earlier, renewable energy and environmental friendly energy. And I'm happy to report that there are plans and they're feasible, they're executable, but of course, each of us will have a part to play in the fruition of those plans. Thank you.
Okay, candidate number 12, Regina English.
So, can you hear me? No? Oh, okay. So, I had the opportunity as well to speak with the CEO of CSU. And if we had all the answers, we wouldn't need the experts. So for me, the style of leadership that I bring is a collaborative style of leadership. So working with those experts and people that are in the community to make sure we're making the best decisions for everyone is what I plan to bring. I know that the Utilities Board certainly is a huge, huge responsibility. If I did not think I was capable, I wouldn't be up here before you tonight. So being able to deal with those hard, complex decisions, it's gonna take 9 people. It's bigger than the voice of one person. So just being able to work across the aisle with those, your colleagues, is what's going to make us successful as a city when it comes to dealing with the utilities and transitioning to renewable energy. I was for the decommissioning of Drake. It's a good thing. So just to speak to that, that's what I have to say. And speaking to the CEO of Colorado Springs Utilities, it was very enlightening. He gave some good information. So there is a good plan, but it could be better. So thank you.
Okay. Candidate number 9, Jay Inman.
The 2020s will be about diverse electrical generation. As a conservative, I love throwing that word back. The stability will be paramount to our power grid and to our water. We've done a great job with water. The problem with power, and we just saw this demonstrated in Texas, is that renewables are not yet reliable. The other problem with renewables is that they increase the cost dramatically in order to have a stable grid, which means poor families and all the families in the Springs will have to use a higher percentage of their budget to pay for utilities. There's a wind farm in Houston. It froze. Houston crashed. The city council in Houston just voted to reopen their massive coal plant because it's going to be cheaper to do that than repair all the doggone windmills. Last Sunday, we just found out that the cost of propane is going up. As a utilities board, whichever people here you elect to the council, we're also going to form the utilities board, we have to pass that cost off in that quarter. If we go to propane totally, we will be in a bad place, just like Texas is going to go up. I promise to review Drake. I think we should keep it open until we know it's a stable grid.
Candidate number 8, Randy Helms.
The duties of the city council members is to govern the utilities board and set policy for our utilities. The experts under the CEO actually run it, but we set the policy based upon the knowledge that we gain. The importance of what the utilities have done, they do have a 30 and 50-year plan, 30-year for utilities, 50-year plan for water. So looking at all of the utilities, electrical, gas, water, and stormwater, it is a $1.1 billion program with 2,000 employees. The city of Colorado Springs has a total of 4,000 city employees. Half of that is with the utilities. Being a city council member, sitting on the board of directors is not a part-time job. And that's what right now, the way it is set up, it looks like that. My plan is to make sure we have backups, as was mentioned. If you look at today's paper, what happened? $23 is going to, on average, to each one of our utility bills. Last Sunday, an excellent article. I'm all for renewables and clean energy, but I want a backup so that when we have events like what happened in Texas and across our country, we have the ability to not hurt ourselves. Thank you.
Candidate number 11, Mary Elizabeth Fabian.
Thank you. So I have a question. What good is moving to a completely sustainable system if we lose our quality of life? And The answer is it's not actually very good, is it? So, as a decision maker on the Public Utilities Board, my responsibility would be to make sure that the decisions we're making are going to ensure that you have affordable energy and are always able to turn your lights on. That's the responsibility. As a treasurer for multiple nonprofits, as a treasurer for the school board, I understand budgets and I understand decisions that we have to make on a dollar and cent point. And I'm one of the weird people who love budgets. I love to look at those numbers and understand them. I pore over them. I'm going to be good in that role because I'm going to question the decisions that are made, but I also understand that elections matter. And part of the reason that we are having to move to renewable options is because elections mattered and people in Denver made choices for us. And so I'm going to encourage every one of you, if you don't like what's happening with the Colorado Springs utilities, you need to be involved like I am because elections matter. Today matters. April 6th is going to matter.
Okay. Candidate number 2, Justin Hermes.
All right, fantastic. Utilities. I can start by saying I've been paying my utility bill for the last 6 years on time, so I think that's pretty good. And do I disagree with the decommission of Drake? I don't. But looking at Nixon and decommissioning that does raise some red flags to me. Solar sounds great, right? So does wind. You know, you sit there at the utilities and they say it's going to be half the price for wind and solar. And I go, well, I'm not a genius when it comes to utilities, but what happens when a hailstorm hits? What happens in 10 years? Like, you know, TVs are obsolete that are 10 years ago. You got new fancy ones now. What happens with the solar panels when they're obsolete? How do we recycle them? It's like these batteries for the electric cars. You're just going to bury them? So I think it all, you know, the grass sounds green on the other side, right? It sounds like a great idea. Do we need some of it? Yes. Do we need to completely go that direction? Totally against that. I think we cannot become too reliant on renewable energy. And the most important thing for me is keeping utilities affordable. We have one of the most affordable utilities in the nation. And it doesn't matter how green you are if you can't put food on the table because the utility bill's $300, $400. So we got to make sure it's affordable just as much as people are concerned about us going green. Thanks.
I'm guessing you will actually end up last, but we're not there yet. Candidate number 4, Dave Donaldson.
Thank you. So in preparation for becoming a board member of CSU Utilities, I've met with Aram Benjamin. We had a nice sit down in his office for a couple of hours. One of the things we talked about was price stability, because that's very important to me, because I believe it's important to you. You don't want your bills fluctuating wildly or going up. So I expressed to him that's an important thing to me. After that meeting, the next week I toured Drake Power Plant so I could see firsthand what's going on there. It's always better to see it than to hear about it, right? So I did that. I've been talking to current and past city council members about their responsibilities on the CSU board to get knowledge in that area. And I've also been reviewing what's called the integrated resource plans for water, wastewater, electric, and gas. So I'm doing all those things to get prepared. But I think the most important thing for the people in this room to know is I'll be concerned about your benefit and your welfare if I am elected to city council. So that'll be my focus. And when I talked with Aram, he's aware of that. So price stability is number one. And then if we move to recyclables or renewables, we need to always have a fossil fuel backup so that we're never left in the situation Texas was.
Candidate number 6, Glenn Carlson.
Thank you. So it's, you know, we should be grateful that as city council members, and they're obviously elected by folks like you have a voice to the utility, not to the city alone. And so consider that a benefit, and that's why it's very important for that everybody participates in things like a city council election. Our city utility has a broad energy diversification plan. And the thing to remember here is that when you think of 5 to 10 years out, that might as well be 5 minutes for a utility. They're thinking 30, 40, 50 years out. Most of our water comes from over 100 miles away. The average person uses 82 gallons a day. And of course, when I turn my faucet on, I'm incredibly happy for it. But there's a lot of work and a lot of smart people behind the scenes to make that happen. Water workers, linemen, wastewater treatment facilities, et cetera. And so it's important that we fully understand what the utility plan is moving forward, whether that is to diversify further and move towards more renewables, cut away coal completely, which I don't see happening, and I would not want that to happen anyways, and to really understand what that plan is moving forward. And so as your candidate in District 1, I want to work hard to understand those complex things, understand that I'm not the smartest person in the room at all times, and to lean on the experts for those big decisions.
Candidate number 10, Olivia Lupia.
I would like to start with a bold statement and say that I believe that it is a complete conflict of interest for the City Council to serve as the board of Colorado Springs Utilities. That being said, that's where we stand. I'm not afraid to ask tough questions, which is exactly what I did when I had my opportunity to sit down with the CEO of Colorado Springs Utilities. I asked him about Texas and was told in return that anyone who says that it was because of renewables doesn't know what they're talking about. I asked him about what happened in northern Colorado. He said, "What?" I said, "How do you justify the same situation that happened in northern Colorado that I had to find buried in multiple newspapers, where on the coldest day of the year, the utility companies shut off the wind turbines in preparation for the cold front blowing in and asked residents to turn down their thermostats, and it was negative 14 degrees outside." And he said that didn't happen. Let that sink in for a moment. As someone who would sit on the board of Colorado Springs Utilities, I believe it is my responsibility to continue to ask those tough questions, to continue to press when I'm being lied to continue to fight on behalf of you, the ratepayers, for fair and equal transparency in what's coming down from your utilities board. Thank you.
Candidate number 7, Arthur Glenn.
Good evening again. As I shared with you in my opening remarks, energy is a key point in my platform. Reliable, secure, and economical energy. Unique amongst this group, I actually do have experience working with CSU. When I was in uniform at US Northcom and NORAD, focused on a project called SPIDER, Smart Power Infrastructure Demonstration for Energy Reliability and Security, for a primary mission over on Fort Carson as they reach around the world to make sure their operations are continue unabated. The focus was to make sure that we could withstand a long-term power outage. I'm a huge fan and proud to say that I support Colorado Springs Utility. I too met with Harm, that's the CEO. Also, as with a number of other folks here, did take the tour of Martin Drake. And what's interesting, I take a look at Martin Drake, and a lot of people see what's coming out of the stacks there. It's interesting. That's not smoke, folks. That is water vapor. And it's interesting, the folks at Drake call that cloud makers. I'm also proud to note that the decision was made at the state level to move away from coal to gas turbines. They are very, very diversified, incorporate renewables through solar, wind, and hydroelectric. We need to focus on making sure that we have the power here locally. I'm Mark Glenn, I thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask a quick favor. Candidate number 14, Carly, you are next. Would you please pronunciate your last name so I don't screw it up later?
Yes, thank you. It's Carly Van Arnhem.
Thank you.
You can call me Carly, though. It's a lot simpler. Hi, I'm Carly, and so one of the great things about our Colorado Springs utilities is our utilities are citizen-owned. We own our utility company, and whoever you elect here tonight is going to work for you. I feel like that is often a concept lost on our elected officials, and I would hope that it won't be lost on anybody sitting here tonight that gets elected. And ultimately, the concerns of almost everybody I talk to, the ratepayers, are our rates and our dependability. While moving towards a more diversified and renewable energy plan is important, and in my opinion, inevitable at some point, it's important we stay diversified so we don't lose our reliability and our affordability. But ultimately, when it comes to the decisions made on these boards, it is my hope that I can bring my decades worth of experience of helping develop and implement strategic plans while always looking for shortfalls and eyes to proving efficiency, and while working with all of those we represent to ensure your concerns are incorporated at every level and in every decision that the utilities companies make. I, like many of us here, I'm not an engineer, I am not a scientist, but what I'm excellent at doing is collaborating and looking at these issues and bringing all of us to the table and looking for those unintended consequences and ensuring that we're not losing focus on our dependability and our affordability for our utility company. Thank you.
He's waited a long time, but he is not last. Garfield Johnson, candidate number 1.
I want to thank you all again for hosting us. And many of my fellow colleagues have answered the questions about Springs Utility, but I want to talk about something more specific. We lost Space Command. We lost Space Command, and nobody raised a finger about it. Water is the main issue here. So we're talking about water. They have a 50-year plan in terms of water. We need a 100-year plan because we need to make Colorado Springs the #1 tourism destination, the #1 military destination for retirees. And if we have this crisis of water and utilities continue to keep popping up every now and then, we're going to run into a problem of keeping them here. So what I want to say is this. Having served and having worked in Iraq and Afghanistan and working with a liaison with various governments and on the transition team, I can say this to you. One of the things that we need to do now is we need to pay attention to these defense contracts because we lost Boeing, we lost Amazon, now we lost Space Command. We need to figure out why is it, because when Senator Wayne Allard was in, we didn't have this problem. Now we've got this problem of attracting military and the military industrial complex to stay here and find us attractive. And we have all the infrastructure here. So as it pertains to utilities, I think my colleagues have already answered it. So I'm using this opportunity just to speak about Space Command. Please raise your voice. We can't lose another contract. Water is an important issue.
All right, lastly, candidate number 13, David Noblet.
I don't know if it's a good answer or not, but anyway, with all the anticipation with that, look, I'm with Olivia, struggling in the fact that it's a amateur board that gets set up there. Effectively, you could put 6 brand new people on this board, and the very next day after we're sworn in, we have a utilities board commission meeting. To that point, I believe that we need to have the accountability, which is the best part of being the utility board, to the citizens and to the constituents, which are the ratepayers, not to the special interests that are from without our city, not to the special people that are downtown that may want to see a power plant redesigned because it fits into their best plans, not necessarily the best plans in the best interest of the city. So accountability is considerable when it comes to actually representing the ratepayers. I can't reinforce that enough. That's critically important. Do we make sure we listen and protect you? Secondly, our concern for the amount of growth that's going on in this community, I don't know if there's the same transition on both sides, right? So we've got 30 and 50-year plans, just like we have plans for the growth and development of this city. And yet with those plans in place, we're still changing the rules of the game. We're still reducing parklands for our developers. We're still minimizing the amount of charges that are potentially going to be charged to the people that are buying new houses, supposedly for affordable housing. We need to make sure that we do everything effectively for everybody across the board. We need to make sure that we have the resources as we expand this city responsibly so that those who are currently here aren't negatively impacted by those that we're trying to entice to come here on an artificial basis.
Okay, we're going to move quickly to our second topic, home rule authority. Home rule authority. And number one candidate, Garfield Johnson.
I'm pulling for you, girl.
Okay. So we're talking about home rule authority, and we need to keep this in place because we have to pay attention to how federal and state policies impact our city, and we want to keep most of the decision making here local. Getting back to this now, getting back to the military situation, we need to have an office of military support and engagement set up within city council in order to liaison with military contractors and the military industrial complex in order to keep these contracts here. We're losing too much contracts, too much money. Alabama does not have the infrastructure for Space Command, but yet $35 billion is being put there just to put it in place when we have it here, and no one is raising anything about it. Amazon, same thing. We just keep edging out, and we were the second choice. All right? So what I'm saying to you is, home rule, we need to be more involved. We need to be more involved in our local politics like you are here. Encourage your kids to get involved in politics and make sure they're Republicans as well. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to talk right over all the clapping that's going on so that we can keep this thing moving. Number 8, Randy Helms. Home rule authority.
The home rule, and as everyone knows, it's our charter determines home rule, and our charter determines the type of city government we have. Over 11 years ago, we determined we wanted to have a strong mayoral presence along with the city council. So that is what is defined as what home rule is. The main part about that is the people, us, the citizens, get to determine things within our city, within boundaries, about how we want to rule the city, the mayoral and the city council. Our tax rates, we determine our tax rates, our city tax rates, I should say, not the state, not the federal government. That is what home rule is. I support that, and I think we should use it more. Thank you.
Fantastic. Great question. I like home rule. 100% for it. I think the more control we can have here, the better, especially where the state is going. Remember growing up here as a kid, Colorado pretty conservative, and that's one of the main reasons why I'm running. I want to make sure we stay conservative. I think the worst thing possible would be for us to turn into a city like Boulder. So the less, the more we can separate ourselves from the state right now, I think the better. I'll be honest, I think the better. I'm not happy with the state legislation. I'm not happy the way it leans left. And the more conservative, the better it is. And that's what makes Colorado Springs a great place. So we need to have home rule. It makes me sad, all the regulations we had put in place COVID. We crushed these businesses because we got one guy up at the Capitol saying, hey, we're shutting it down. I'm going to extend the mask another 30 days because I feel like it. It's a political move. And people are losing their livelihood. The businesses are struggling because it's a political play. And that's a big reason why I've told people, I ain't not taking your money. I'm going to spend $4,100 on my campaign. That's enough. And I want you to go out and support the local businesses who have been crushed by COVID and by somebody who said, you know what? You can't operate your business. I'm going to limit the capacity and how you do your business. That sounds like socialism to me.
All right, number 4, Dave Donaldson.
Well, it's kind of hard to follow that, isn't it? So, home rule or autonomy for local areas, or just more control here, I'm all for that. I'm a conservative, okay? I share your values. I'm a big Second Amendment guy. I'm a lifetime member of the NRA. So there, I topped you on that one. and that's really what it comes down to. That's why I'm running. You know, after some of the things that happened in our country recently, I want to represent people, really a lot of people like you, right? Good Americans that are concerned about what's going on in the country. And I think what's going on up in Denver with our governor increases that concern, right? And so more control locally is good. And again, my values, I think, reflect yours. That's why I would ask for your votes in District 1 on April 6th or sooner. The ballots come out very soon, like this, well, is it tomorrow? Friday, whenever that is. So, well, the ballots come out this Friday. Thank you, Dave Donaldson.
All right. Number 11, Mary Elizabeth Fabian.
I personally believe that decisions are best made in our own communities. And so for that reason, I love home rule. And I actually think we've underutilized it. You know, I'm a small business owner, and I spent 6 weeks twiddling my thumbs. Actually, I spent 6 weeks going and taking courses online while my business was completely shut down, because somebody in Denver said it had to be shut down. Now, somebody local to us in Colorado Springs, but somebody in Denver. And it's time for us to start utilizing that home rule authority. We can make our decisions. You can make your own decision. I trust you to decide if you want to wear a mask. I don't need Governor Polis telling me you need to wear a mask. So for that reason, we should embrace home rule, and we should make sure that not only do we know what home rule means, but we should make sure that our kids understand home rule authority. Because everybody sitting in here, you're voting now, but I've got a kid who's going to be voting in 2.5 years, and I want her to understand that her voice matters, and she should be involved today, and she should be encouraging and forcing representatives to actually listen to her. And so I'm asking each and every one of you, reach out to us. Make us listen to you.
Number 13, David Noblet.
I truly believe in home rule. My biggest concern about it is the form of government that we currently have, because right now we have a lack of accountability. We literally have one person making the decisions about legislation that's coming down from the state. And to that point, the city council is not representing itself as an equal form of government with the mayor to represent the people and to bring their concerns forward in the form of government that we have. I've literally seen singular decisions by an executive within the city determine the application of when we do or do not actually apply to state law. I don't think that that's an effective form of government. I don't believe the representative republic that we all live in underneath the Constitution would say that we have an edict from a singular person to make the decisions on when and when not. We actually would adhere to the state legislation. And again, because the fact that our council currently is not representing the people, they're not listening to the constituents, they're not actually taking into consideration what's happening in Colorado Springs versus what's happening in other portions of the state. And so they're not transmitting that information back up to the executive branch, and there's no influence to try to correct the course and make sure that we're taking care of our actual constituents instead of singularly making those decisions. So if we don't hold the legislation through the council accountable, then we're never going to be able to hold the mayor accountable. So we'll never be able to actually utilize a blessing of a home rule city for the best interests of our citizens. We need to get that back. We need to have proper representation.
Number 14, Carly Van Arnhem.
So I fully support our home rule status. Now, the home rule status is very limited in scope. The powers granted to a home rule city are defined by the state of Colorado, and they are generally limited into scope as far as government structure and elections, fiscal authority, such as setting and collecting taxes, and making personnel decisions, such as unions and personnel laws. Beyond that, there's not a whole lot more power that is granted to home rule cities by the state. So I would love to sit here and say, oh, we're a home rule city, so we can pick and choose what city or state ordinances and state laws that we follow, but that would be disingenuous, because that's just not under the scope of a home rule city. Now, what I can say is I absolutely agree with government transparency and holding our representatives accountable. And I also understand that meaningful change happens here at the local level, and is what we need is a collaborative, organized, and persuasive city council that will affect change at the state level to make the local issues that we don't currently have control over a local issue and bring that control back here. But to sit here and say, oh, we're home rule and we can do whatever we want, that's just disingenuous. So is what my hope is to represent the district fully with the issues that are within local control and advocate for positive change for the issues outside of local control. So Colorado Springs is being heard at the state level. Thank you.
Number 7, Arthur Glenn.
When I came here to Colorado Springs, I was completely enamored with what I like to refer to as the Western ideals. Freedom and responsibility comes to mind. Thank God we have home rule. But it's more than just city council. It requires us to have the vote for the whole state and to fight for the values that we hold dear. I was very fortunate to see that during the COVID that we did have our health department here would go toe-to-toe with the governor to demand why we were not allowed to open up businesses sooner and constraints. Had we not had home rule authority, we would have been blowed over by both Denver and Boulder and Aurora. That's not where we want to be. We are unique and we stand firm on our ideals. The key to it as we move forward is to make sure that to retain our freedoms is that we work with our legislators, our representatives and our senators to fight for our values, even if it means litigating all the way up to our state Supreme Court, and if necessary, the U.S. Supreme Court. We need to stand for what we believe. Thank you.
Number 10, Olivia Lupia.
I'm so excited to talk about this because it's something that goes so underutilized and it's such an undervalued resource that we have, to be a home rule municipality. There are arguments, particularly relating to COVID and the situation that we find our city in, saying, well, the governor's authority overrides our home rule status, blah, blah, blah. Here's my answer to that. Monument said, we're done, thank you very much. They're not a home rule municipality and they're kicking. They are out there living their lives. They're not being trampled on by fear. So if a non-home rule municipality can advocate for themselves, what more power do we have, even if we aren't technically allowed under our home rule to make our own decisions as we've been told that we are, and those of us who truly understand what that means. So I am a huge advocate for utilizing our home rule status to every possible boundary that we can, and then also taking a stand for when things are not right, home rule or not. It is our job to stand up and say, no, thank you. Colorado Springs cannot change the rest of the way the state is going until we fix ourselves. And that's something that we see reflected at our state level and our federal level. So if we can get ourselves together, we can be that beautiful, bright, shining city on the hill that God raised up us to be and has put us in the position to empower ourselves and our people to do such. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate all the people from Monument that were here for an election that they cannot vote in. Appreciate you being here. Okay, candidate number 12, Regina English.
I believe in accountability and transparency, and right now the face of the council does not actually represent what the city actually looks like, and I believe that the city has done a disservice in keeping those perspectives away from the table. So I hope to be able to be one of those that will change the face of the city council. It's inevitable that there are going to be 6 different faces on the city council coming up here in April. And for me, I'm going to be very intentional on being transparent and inclusive and making sure the voice of community is at the table. I support making decisions for us, by us. We live here, we raise our kids here, so those decisions should belong to us. And the decisions that are in the hands of the people who are not as inclusive should not be the ones making those decisions. So A vote for me is a vote for you because I'm about transparency and accountability. Thank you.
Number 9, Jay Inman.
I have two specific issues that I really want to drive with home rule. Number one, open up completely. We had 650,000 small businesses in Colorado pre-COVID that employed 1.1 million Coloradoans. Today it's down to 480,000. That is a 30% loss of jobs, imagination, and innovation. I understand and I sympathize with those who have lost friends and family, and this is not to trivialize it, but we need to put that in perspective. The death rate nationwide and in El Paso County is 0.1%. In 1968, during the Hong Kong flu, the death rate was 0.5%. It was 5 times that. They did not quarantine, they did not shut down businesses, and it was a much higher death rate. We are being foolish by keeping masks on people's face. I want us to use home rule to remove that. Second thing is, if I have a little time here, I want to reassociate penalties to marijuana use and possession. That is going to kill our city, and if I have a chance, I'll talk more on that in the business impact on why Space Command left. Marijuana is part of it.
All right. Number 6, Glenn Carlson.
Thank you. It's a great question. I want to come at it from a personal experience, especially being a business owner. Last year, our business was closed down on March 19th, as maybe many of yours were. And at the time, COVID was kind of going crazy, and we were kind of scratching our heads saying, El Paso County and the city, we're a little bit different. Our numbers are not that high. We're not all that tragic, and we have 3 employees who lost family members, so it's something I take seriously. I still wanted to reserve that right to take a look locally and understand how can we address the problem. Do we have to close down along with the rest of the state? Are we comparable to, let's say, Denver? And in my head, frankly, I said, no, I didn't think so, even though I took COVID seriously and still do. And so coming out of that, fast forward to today, El Paso County's numbers, and the health department here has done a great job. All of us have done a great job in reducing those numbers. And I'm still asking that same question. Are we ready to open back up fully? And I think we're at that point. And so that's what I think I would like to push the city and the mayor and the county commissioners to start talking to the state and pushing for that motion. Thank you.
Okay, next topic is land use and development. Land use and development. The first answer or first response will come from candidate number 8, Randy Helms.
All right out of the box here. So recently the city council passed the ordinance reducing the land required from 7.5 acres per 1,000 residents to 5.5 acres per 1,000 residents, developers for building our homes, our developments, and using those acres for the parks and trails inside those developments. I actually support doing that. Now, here's the reason. As I did my research and looked into it, on average across not only the city, inside the city of Colorado Springs, but also throughout the area, everything's been less than 5.5 acres over history. Also, we've had a tremendous reduction in the number of residents, i.e. kids, that are being born. So I believe we are not going to lose the parks and the trails that will be built inside of the developments. Secondly, the developers are going to pay more in their fees for this. So I actually support the ordinance that was passed about a month or so ago. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to pull an executive order here. If you can go to 3 minutes, since I actually just drew his number, Jim, number 3. Jim, if you don't mind, you're going to talk about home rule authority, as I missed you. And that's what happens when Vanna leaves me. I forget things. And then after that, so we're going to give you 3 minutes, and then you can talk about land use and development.
Please excuse me. I will be respectful. The home rule question, I think, has been sufficiently answered. I believe the only thing that I could add is personal and professional experience. Of my 30 years of Army service as an infantry officer, I spent 14 of those years as a commander at every level from second lieutenant to colonel. And the number one thing you learn as a commander is this: with great authority comes great responsibility. And that is appropriate when we discuss home rule. Of course we want home rule. Who does not want to rule their own home? Of course we do. But, however, we need to also understand and fully embrace there's much responsibility that goes with that. And this is why we're here this evening, where you have a group of very qualified candidates seeking a city council position. And we have you as citizens who get an opportunity to cast that vote that will ultimately determine who sits in that seat. And if neither of us take on our responsibility, then home rule is useless. Now, along with that comes the responsibility that we have to each other. And that responsibility is for the council to recognize the future and what we need to do and come up with the best courses of actions to help us get there, a shared vision. And you, the people, because you elected us, we assume you trust us. When we explain to you what your part in this solution is, that you pile on like we have piled on to help us get there.
Land use?
Oh, land use. Thank you. Land use. Land use is another great example of responsibility. We have to be courageous when we determine and decide that we are going to go into an area, a piece of new land, and develop it. What are we going to develop it for, and where does it fit in our long-term objectives and our long-term vision? Who do we select to develop it, and what do we put there? Now, that's the easy part of the solution. The more difficult part of the solution is when we work with the builders, developers, and all the stakeholders who turn that land into something useful. What are the prerequisites and what are the demands that we place on that organization to ensure that whatever we put on that land is sustainable, maintainable at a reasonable cost? And how do we share that cost? Thank you.
Number 10, Olivia Lupia.
So this is a very, very broad topic and encompasses a lot of different avenues. I would specifically like to address with the zoning and new developments that are occurring across our city. I think it is inexcusable for City Council to unilaterally ram new developments into existing communities, particularly when there is hardcore, outspoken opposition from the neighborhoods. That has been witnessed in my district personally, in my neighborhood. I have heard accounts of this all over the city. So it's these kinds of issues that we as City Council members are responsible to you, the people, to hear your voice. Is there going to be new development in our city? Yes, our city is growing, but it is certainly not the solution to shove a square peg into a round hole, rezone single-family units to put multi-family units, especially in communities that are single-family based. We cannot be compromising the integrity of our existing neighborhoods to propagate a progressive agenda that no one actually wants except those who are in charge. So, with that being said, I think it is our job to listen to the constituents. Again, as much input as we can take. We're not always going to agree on every situation or every solution, But it is our job to let you know that you have been heard. And we especially would never want to get to a point where our city, our neighborhoods have to sue our city to the highest possible level in order for them to be heard. Thank you.
Candidate number 9, Jay Inman.
Spot on, Olivia. Spot on. We must listen to the neighbors of rezoning, the neighbors of infill. That is a critical conversation. You don't whack it up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday when everybody's working. You put it at a time when a neighborhood can show up and voice either their discontent or their approval. There's a second aspect of this that I want to add into it. Whatever land development projects, management that we have going on, I am 100% against raising any taxes to pay for it. In this time of COVID, we have people who have already lost jobs. When they start cranking up the mortgages again, and those stimulus checks are going to stop, when those things happen, we cannot increase the financial burden on our citizens in these tough times. I will oppose any tax rate increases. Now, should we take what we have? Absolutely. We should put it in a project order. I'm a digital architect at Microsoft. I spent 20 years in the Army. I think I know how to do that. Let's put that in a conversation. Let's have that conversation, put it in project order using the resources we already have.
I don't know if he's right about the stimulus checks stopping. Apparently, they won't ever. All right, candidate number 7, Arthur Glenn.
Colorado Springs, we're the victims of our own success. People come from all around the country and around the world to visit. And once here, they say, we want to live here. A city that doesn't grow dies. The challenge that we have is that we have, as already identified, we have intense regulations and tax and fee structures here in the city of Colorado Springs. Talking with a current city councilman, he made comment, and he was almost apoplectic. Why are people leaving the city? Talking with a few developers, found out it takes $60,000 of permitting cost before they even break ground. There is a difference of $30,000 between developing a home in Colorado Springs as compared to move it out in the county. And the comment was, why are people moving out in the county? We are a democratic society, and people are able to vote with their wallets, and they're doing just that. The biggest issue that we have, particularly in the city of Colorado Springs, was a state law that was passed a number of years ago, building defect. It has had an appalling effect on our ability to create much needed housing here in our community. What we need to do from a city council standpoint is fight back on that. It's a tort reform. And right now, if you have one unit that has had building defect, the whole unit is subject to lawsuit. Developers will not need it. We need to provide for our citizens here and make sure they have a safe place to live.
Candidate number 1, Garfield Johnson.
I would like for you to promise me that you would go out and recruit 3 people, you will evangelize them and make them a Republican. Before I start this question, I need to see a show of hands. You'll go and evangelize, and you'll find 3 people, and you evangelize and you make them a Republican. Okay, I need to see those hands again. Okay, because some people are faking this. And this is a serious problem. Our party is dying here in Colorado Springs. Members are falling away. So we get back to land development. We're on the 50-year plan. Okay, why aren't we on a 100-year plan? Why Spring Utilities have us saying we only have 50, and then we're building out the wazoo, okay? We're building these houses where only 2 cars can park in front, not 4 or 5, a whole family, you know? So my issue with land development is, as a city councilman in for District 6, I promise you that I will definitely come up to speed and get to a better understanding of this subject, and I'll be able to address this matter in an open forum just like this and get feedback from you. And I won't just make this decision based on what I think. I will listen to the people and make decisions on land development, because right now it can go, we really don't know. We really don't know a certain answer for this. All right, so thank you.
Man, I don't know about all that recruiting and making people Republicans, because, you know.
We are a party of ideas. So let's go and get those people.
I did not tell you to pick the mic back up.
I apologize, Mr. Moderator.
All right, candidate number 6, Glenn Carlson.
I love Garfield. He cracks me up. Anyways, I'm not going to recruit. At the city level, there are definitely key things that we focus on day to day that are wildly important to land use and development. Randy, I believe, spoke about the PLDO, the Parkland Dedication Ordinance. The number was 7.5 acres per 1,000 residents. It was never actually operated there. What happened was that the developers ended up paying a fee instead of dedicating land, and the fee usually got sucked up in administrative and maintenance costs. And so parks, trails, and open spaces, which is a big passion of mine, it's something I've worked on here for a long time. We need to figure out a long-term stable plan to address that and not piecemeal it. Infill, which can be a great word or a nasty word depending on if it's in your neighborhood. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Currently where I live, they're trying to plow in a 400-unit apartment complex into Mountain Shadows. Does not fit the neighborhood. We had 250 people on the planning call. I would consider that vocal objection to a project, and City Council should listen. Lastly, we have a major zoning project called Retool COS that's going to change the future of Colorado Springs. I don't have a ton of time, but it's complex, and everybody should get familiar with it.
Candidate number 11, Mary Elizabeth Fabian. Number 11, Mary Elizabeth Fabian.
To answer the question, it's Retool Colorado Springs. So Retool COS. And it's part of an overall, ties into Plan COS. So land use and development. I have a couple of thoughts here. First of all, neighborhoods should be considered when we're making our decisions at the city council level. We need to do what is right for each neighborhood, because what may work in my neighborhood may not work 3 miles up the street, and I need to be understanding of that, and I also need to make sure that I can collaborate with my council members, because it does not matter if I am making a good vote. If I can't convince 4 people to come along for the ride, it's not happening. So that's one issue. Another one is Colorado Springs is this amazing place because people made great decisions about it 100 years ago and 150 years ago. And so we need to be making those same good forward-thinking decisions. One of those decisions is looking at, when we're considering infill, which can be a dirty word, we need to be looking at places like Rustic Hills Shopping Center in my own district. You know, right now City Council is looking at creating a light industrial area there. So light industrial in Rustic Hills North, and that's wrong. That's wrong. I was on the North Academy Revitalization Committee. I went to City Council, and I personally spoke in front of their council work session and asked for homes to be placed there, parks, for us to actually have part of our community grown up, and it didn't happen. And now this is what we look at.
Candidate number 14, Carly Van Arnhem.
Is a very complex and diverse issue. It's very divisive. A lot of people have different thoughts, and there's no way we can address it in 1 minute, so I'll talk fast. We need to consider uniqueness for our neighborhoods, and like others have said, make sure we're not alienating our folks that have lived here for decades, whose families have lived here for decades. When we're making these types of decisions, we need to look at underutilized commercial areas for infill, not slamming huge apartments right next to our neighborhoods. We need to consider the impact to our water supply, our utility rates, and our utility stability when we're talking about density. Now, increasing diversity and density is important to keep up with our housing shortage and to provide affordable housing. But completely changing zoning codes to make that happen is not necessarily the way to do it. Working with developers, finding cost prohibitive over-regulation that's impeding the progress of building affordable housing is a great place to start before we start tearing down single-family homes to put in apartment complexes. Again, big issue, very important to get neighborhood impact or feedback, and making sure our entire district, not just certain neighborhoods, are represented is essential. Thank you.
Okay, candidate number 4, Dave Donaldson.
Okay, so land use and development. When I decided I was interested in running for city council, I talked with Andy Pico. Maybe some of you know him. He's Representative Pico now. He told me, hey, Dave, your time will be split up. 50% will be CSU, utilities. You're going to spend 50% of your time on that, 25% on land use, and the other 25% will be everything else. Okay, so CSU and this are two big topics. The PLDO ordinance, which was brought up, I would not have supported lowering the requirement for developers. I would have kept it at 7.5, or they should have paid a compensation that would have equaled what we were getting from them before. Number 2, the next thing is 2424 Garden of the Gods is an important infill project in District 1, which Glenn has talked about. It's very serious because, as you remember, there was something called the Waldo Canyon Fire in 2012. There are very few egress routes from those neighborhoods, like Mountain Shadows. Friends of ours got out of there and they came and stayed with us when that happened. So it's important to know who is going to be making those decisions. And it's important to know if they have preferences. I have not accepted any donations from developers. One of my opponents has accepted $10,000. I declined a donation yesterday from the developers, and that's all my time.
Candidate number 12, Regina English.
Keep it short and sweet because there is no way we can answer this question in 1 minute. However, land use and zoning is very multifaceted. We know that. And the way the city council is set up right now, hard-working men and women cannot show up to these meetings and have a voice. So I believe the process from the beginning to the end, communities should have a voice. And decisions that we make should be meaningful and responsible around communities, because every community is different and what works for one may not work for the other. So those are things that we should definitely look at. And we do need to work with these developers. Like, we have to. It doesn't make sense to not work with them because these are the people that's coming in our city or that already reside in our city and are developing in our communities. And if we feel like we're being intruded on and they're being intrusive, then we need to be more vocal. And I believe that the city needs to be more intentional on how they're getting information out to say, hey, this is what's going on, or we're having a meeting, to bring more of a collective voice to the table in these decision-making processes. So thank you.
Candidate number 2, Justin Hermes.
In the lineup here, I don't like that. We got affordability issue here, folks. Average price of a home is $415,000, right? We got a 2-bedroom apartment, average price $1,281 for that. We got 238 homes on the market this morning. Resale homes. People say, no, we have 1,000. That's counting homes that are being built and not going to be finished a year from now. That's not real inventory, okay? We have to make sure we keep affordability. Retool Colorado Springs has to happen. We haven't relooked the zoning code here since the early 90s. Since the early 90s, okay? There's appropriate places where we can really transform areas. Transform the Citadel is a big initiative of mine. 93,000 square feet for sale for $3.5 million. Comes with 4 to 5 acres buildable outside of the mall. Yet, last week, City Council just passed a measure, millions of dollars to build affordable housing off Academy and Airport. Why? Because it's sexy. It's the new thing. Builders get paid. It's big money. Developers make money. Why aren't we going into Rustic Hills Shopping Center? Why aren't we going into the Citadel Mall, transforming these units? It's more cost-effective, and we can provide affordable housing, $800 a door. I had a lady call me today. She said, I got your flyer, transform the Citadel. She says, this affordable housing, I need it. My husband just passed. I live on Social Security alone. $1,200 isn't affordable, folks. You need 800 a door units. The city does not belong in affordable housing. No part of it at all. They need to enable the investor to get involved. You can make money. You can make money. You can make 8-9% cash on cash return. Look at Russet Hills Shopping Center and look at the Citadel Mall. Let's transform these vacant commercial spaces we already have in this town. Thank you.
Okay, and lastly, candidate number 13, David Noblet.
One of my tenets in my campaign is responsible growth. My concern is that I don't believe that growth is a bad thing, but growth just doesn't have to pay for itself. It has to pay for the impact that it has for the entire community. And with that, when the government gets in the business of picking the winners and losers and how we start to move these developments forward, the concern really has to be, regardless of the fact that the constituents have come forward with concerns, and we've codified those concerns in some of these really neat plans, but yet we just turned right around and decreased the amount of the parklands that was defined within the plan that had been laid before by the constituents who were asked to bring forward their concerns. So once again, we have a representative government that's actually not representing the people. And this is a critically important part of this, is the fact that we need to have representatives that actually believe that they represent their constituents and not the special interest. I've seen these plans, but if you look on the east and the north section of my district, you're seeing the same developments that we've seen in the past, rooftops with no interconnectivity, and basically land sprawls that really don't have any connection to each other, or the development plans that have been laid in place. So we've basically repeated ourselves in the process, haven't followed the plans, but we've expected different outcomes. And I'm not quite sure exactly how that's supposed to come about if we honestly don't sit and do the right planning at the right time to hold the right people accountable. Look, we just spent $1 billion to bring in water for Banning Lewis Ranch, and we're annexing thousands of additional acres on top of it before we fully develop that property. Let's take care of what we currently have before we run out of water and property costs for the rest of the residents that are currently here.
Okay, executive decision. The last topic, you will have 1 minute, because we want to make sure we save enough time for folks in the audience to be able to ask a few questions. And so, last topic is budgets and tax revenue. And our first responder will be Arthur Glenn, number 7.
Right now, we are at a cross point in our society here. Recreational marijuana is being pushed to generate additional revenue here. I'm here to tell you I'm firmly opposed to recreational marijuana or marijuana of any sorts. We are just now starting to experience the devastating impact. And when I hear City Council say we need the money to go after and regulate the marijuana industry, made a major mistake when we passed marijuana here in Colorado. Right now, over the last several years, actually last 10 plus years, we've been slowly being taxed one small tax, one slice at a time. Right now, there's a lot of people that have chosen to come to Colorado Springs, but have actually ended up elsewhere because the cost of living here is so high.
All right. Candidate number 9, Jay Inman.
I want to build a little bit on that marijuana discussion and the tax that we are paying on that right now. I've read in the Gazette multiple places that our mayor and current city council waffles back and forth. Oh, we'll wait until the space decision is made, and then we'll put it on the ballot. That waffling is foolish. It is not resolute. And when a commander, and I've commanded troops in combat in the Army, when a commander looks at an iffy situation, that commander turns toward the decisive situation. Guess what Space Command was thinking? The commanders, those out there, this is my analysis. I don't know. We need to ask them perhaps. But my guess is that Space Command looked at that waffling and said, nope. And so they went to Huntsville. They're gone. How many more DOD and businesses are not going to come here? That is a tax on our community based on the waffling with the marijuana issue.
Candidate number 3, Jim Mason.
Excuse me again, gentlemen. The question again, please. Oh, of course, I could have guessed that one, right? Well, first of all, I'm a physically conservative type of guy. Therefore, we have to watch very carefully, and all of us, the taxation question. Second of all, the budget piece of that. We have to agree to a common vision. In the military, they call it a common operating picture. What is it that we want the city to look like 20, 30, 40 years from now? And we have to prioritize the budget accordingly. I don't even get a chance to talk about the recreational marijuana, but thank you, all the colleagues who have. But that's a no for a lot of reasons. Thank you.
All right. Candidate number 13, David Noblet.
Look, I'm going to go back to my original position on this as far as the determination when government starts to pick the winners and losers. We got to realize that some of the issues that we have with our growth is because we've overly incentivized a significant portion of this business community as it's come to Colorado Springs. We need to realize, for instance, that Shield Sporting Goods was given $13 million in tax breaks. We're going to have to spend $650 million in revenue generation to offset that $13 million. They gave $430 million in tax breaks to Banning Lewis Ranch. I'm asking if the homes out there are any less competitive than any place else in town. Our concerns are that we have a structure of fees and taxes that need to be evenly distributed throughout the economy so that everybody within the economy is able to participate in supporting your city, your community that you live in. If they're not paying their fair share, the question is going to be, where are they going to look for the balance that's going to need to be made up? And you know where that's going to be. So my concern is that we need to do what's right for everyone.
Candidate number 1, Garfield Johnson.
So this is going to be real controversial, all right? So hold on to your seat. Okay, so we just passed this, we just set up this commission to investigate police use of force, all right? I support the police. I don't know of any major incidents where our police are abusing citizens. We have good community policing here. But what that does, I'm going to say this. I'm the first person to come out and say this. What that does is a police officer can leave and go home and expect to get back, and all of a sudden, he's got a lawsuit, and he's got a felony murder charge, and he can end up going to jail and they'll go back just for doing his job. Or it opens up the floodgates for lawsuits, all right, which you will pay, the taxpayers. So we want to talk about budget? So why is it that nobody's speaking out against this? Somebody needs to start telling these people who are coming from out of town and doing these protests here to go back where they came from.
Candidate number 4, Dave Donaldson.
Okay, so budgets and revenue. I'm going to add on to what Art was saying about recreational marijuana. I'm totally against sending that vote to the people. I'm going to be a solid vote against recreational marijuana in Colorado Springs. I approach it from a medical standpoint. As I told you, I was a PA in the Army and then in civilian practice afterwards. There's a great book you can read. It's by a former New York Times reporter, Alex Berenson, and it's called Tell Your Children, the Connection Between Marijuana, Mental Illness, and Violence. And yeah, it's excellent. You read that, and I recommend you buy it and give it to others. One thing I just want to clear this up, Mayor Suthers is not wishy-washy on recreational marijuana. He doesn't want it in Colorado Springs. And I'm the conservative choice in District 1. That means your money is yours. If government is going to take it, they better have a very good reason.
Candidate number 6, Glenn Carlson.
Thank you. When I worked for Colorado's largest company, Aero Electronics in Denver, I managed over $660 million in revenue. So from that standpoint, I know about managing big budgets and what you got to do when times are hard to make a dollar go as far as you can. As a small business owner, I live that every single day. And so I want you all to be comfortable knowing that I am comfortable making hard decisions and squeezing your dollars as far as they can go as well. Like Dave said down below, I'm very disappointed in many of the tax breaks that have been given for big businesses here. And then to touch on Dave and Justin's point, many of those big businesses that are now creating these giant empty shopping centers were probably given similar tax breaks. So we should always be careful about doing things like that. I think taxation is necessary, and I think a lot of people here would agree as long as it's transparent and done responsibly and with voter input. Thank you.
Candidate number 14, Carly Van Arnhem.
We're the ones suffering. And I may be a little out of my element here with this particular venue, but if anybody's been to my website, you'll know that I am a proponent for recreational marijuana. At the end of the day, our city is losing $8 to $20 million a year in tax revenue. The marijuana is still here in the city. It's just Manitou, Pueblo, and Denver are reaping those benefits.
Candidate number 10, Olivia Lupia.
Colorado Springs and the state have made it publicly known that they met or exceeded their revenue projections for the year 2020. They don't need any more of your money. So thank goodness for Tabor, which allows us to get some of it back. That being said, I would encourage each and every one of you to thoroughly research ballot issue 1, which will be the only issue on your ballot, which talks about allowing them to remove the 30-word limit on titles for tax initiatives. This is actually a way to subvert the extra and additional security provisions that we have in our Colorado Springs City Charter, Tabor, that keep us actually above par on the state. So when they say we want to bring ourselves to the state level, we're going to bring ourselves up. No, we're going to be bringing ourselves down. So it's so important that we are all aware of exactly where our tax money is being used. And so I highly encourage all of you to educate yourselves on this specific issue.
Candidate number 11, Mary Elizabeth Fabian.
So in 2020, I actually advocated against fees that the city of Colorado Springs, specifically Parks and Recreation, thought that they should impose. I was very vocal. I created a movement. It made national headlines. And I did that because I don't think that the city should be increasing our fees. And it's not just increasing our taxes. It's every little fee that they add. It's when they added parking meters and then increase the cost of the parking meters. And now Sundays, you don't have free parking downtown because it starts with parking meters. I'm also against recreational marijuana, and I'm specifically against it because it's great that there's tax revenue now, but do you want to know who is a recession-proof industry? The military. And I'm not interested in watching them walk away because we have rec marijuana here. I don't want to incentivize them to go to Huntsville, Alabama, or really anywhere else.
That's it?
Thank you. I know how to make decisions with budgets because I do it as the treasurer for several nonprofits. I do it as a business owner.
All right. Candidate number 12, Regina English.
I believe that budgeting should be done responsibly. I'm not for tax increases. However, we know this is something that's going to happen. So it needs to be done with transparency. I don't believe that we should have to pick up the slack for a deal that was made to a big developer. and giving them tax breaks. We shouldn't have to pick up that slack. So I'm not for that. But when there is a tax increase, it should be transparent and community should be engaged, and we should all be a part of that decision, whether our taxes go up or they stay the same or whether our taxes go down. But these are things that we inevitably have to deal with, whether we like it or not, So we just need to be making meaningful decisions around taxes and budgeting and make sure that budgeting, the funds are being allocated responsibly and effectively. Thank you.
I just want smooth roads. Okay, candidate number 8, Randy Helms.
The budget. Because of my experience at the highest level of DOD with billion-dollar budgets and running the budget of a major university and a charitable organization, the first thing I did when I got into the race is I dug into the City of Colorado Springs budget. We have a for 2021 is a $349 million general fund budget. Inside of that, I discovered some interesting things. Issue 2A, the stormwater fees. Well, guess what that's going to do? That frees up the general fund to hire up to 120 police officers and 32 firefighters. I think that's good. Also, the budget for 2020, Guess what happened on that? Builders, sales tax, we were able to give our small businesses a sales tax holiday because of their tax revenue that building homes, commercial industry helps us. So there are good things about our budget. Thank you.
All right, to close us out, Justin, candidate number 2.
I keep dropping. Are we good now? I was going to say, I keep dropping further and further in the lineup. It's embarrassing. Now I'm last. Less government, less taxes. That's my deal right there, folks. And we just got slapped with another tax increase the other day on stormwater. So we talked about affordability. We got to make sure that we keep taxes low, and the less government involvement, the better, in my opinion. And people say, Justin, you're not a Republican or a Democrat. I grew up a Republican. And I'm very conservative, I'm going to tell you that right now. And when I look at the national level, and we're hitting upwards around $30 trillion in national debt, I can't really put an R on my sleeve. I can't do it anymore. And I think the two-party system is becoming too polarized. But what I want to tell you tonight is I'm a conservative. I love America. I love sitting next to guys like this. These guys fight for our freedom. This is why we're up here tonight. It's because of these guys fighting for our freedom. And I love our police force. I love our law enforcement. Colorado Springs, beautiful place to live. God bless it.
And there we have it, not wearing an R. So listen, I want you to please bring your attention to Ann. Ann's going to give you instructions, and we have to move quickly. So she will talk about that.
Yes, because we do need to be out of here by 9 o'clock. But listen, we just wanted you to be introduced to many of our candidates that are running. I would urge you now to go do your homework and go to their websites. We have an information sheet you can pick up on the way out, as well as they will have tables, and I'm sure they will be staying to answer some questions. All right, guidelines for asking questions. Keep it pithy, people. We only have about a little over 15 minutes. So you may ask one question of the person or persons that are in your district, like 10 seconds for a question, and we will cut your mic, unfortunately.
We're only going to do one person, or we're going to ask people in that district?
I'm going to do a gang of mic
in
cutting
that
on
district.
this one.
Yeah.
But just the one person you're saying?
Watch this.
No, I said person or persons in that district. So you can line up right here. I'm going to put the microphone here.
Move quickly. Move quickly. Don't run, because we don't even want to get injured in here. We call that a 1.3. No 1.3s tonight.
I'm in District 6. In your opinion, what should the city do, if anything, for businesses because of the COVID?
Okay, sorry. In District 6, the business community hasn't been hit that hard. But if you look at the rest of the city, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but if you look at the rest of the cities, you see lots of businesses are closing shop. So what the city should do, I think the city, I think there was a stimulus check that was given to the city for small business, and they should really filter that down to the little man on the street or the business owners. So that's what I'm thinking we should do. But when I get into city council, I'm praying, and God answers prayers. When I get in, I definitely would like to look at some of these things. So right now, I don't have any specific answers right now because we're still in a COVID-19 time. Step up. Thank you very much.
Come on up. Microphone. Yeah, come on. Here we go.
Okay, I'm concerned about utilities and renewables. I can't remember which of you were on the CSU board. As far as renewables are concerned,
Just a question, sir.
three.
District 3.
Who's District 3? The question is, we have 400 wind turbines in the state. The turbines last only 20 years. What is the plan of the utilities when all of these machines give out?
Mr. Art Glenn. Yeah, this is Art Glenn. Am I here? Okay. As far as the wind turbines, right now, those wind turbines across the nation are actually be buried in landfills. There is no way to renew those. The study that we did 10 years ago on renewable energy, we found that there was only a 30% what we call penetration of renewables in our market. The key for us is to focus on a variety of portfolio of energy sources. What I didn't mention in my previous comments is about coal. Drake currently has 100 days of coal. The unfortunate thing being transitioned to natural gas, and the upside though is as Nixon power plant does retain that energy source.
Yeah, and I'll just address that as well. You cannot recycle the wind turbines. You cannot recycle the solar panels. They're the equivalent of throwing a lithium battery into the landfill. That being said, the simple solution is don't use them. It's a very simple, dry-cut solution. Stop installing them. It's not very difficult, in my opinion, but we continue to see our city council press this progressive agenda for the sake of being progressive. So that's the very short, succinct answer to actually, it's not even really a complicated question. Stop it.
My question is for those candidates in District 5. Our capacity after Drake gets taken down is 704 megawatts. With the elephant in the room of of electric vehicles, our projection in 2030 is at most, or maybe more, 8 billion megawatts. With the efficiency of an electric vehicle, maybe getting 100 miles out of the equivalent energy of a gallon of gas. The question is, what's the plan for the CSU to meet this demand?
The answer is that we should all be concerned about that because they're starting to move to shut down fuel-powered vehicles and move more and more to electric vehicles. I don't think it's a good idea, but that's the idea that they've got going. We have to address this by actually reaching out and making decisions now, and we need to be making those decisions, and they're being researched. I went to Drake. I also went and sat with Aram Benjamin and had this conversation with him. What about the elephant in the room? And his statement was that he's already starting to consider that on the grid. We're not going to have the power without actually having coal. I don't believe that we will.
Ladies first.
understanding from my meeting with the CSU is that we have a very strategic plan to start to reduce our coal dependency. We're not turning off that switch all at once while we're firing up renewables. This is a very eclectic and comprehensive approach to energy sustainability. There's, even after Drake shuts down, if Drake shuts down, and then the next coal power plant is scheduled to shut down in 2030, there will still be a coal power plant in Colorado. It is my understanding that the goal is not to cut fossil fuels completely out of the equation, but kind of shift the balance of use and shift it from mainly fossil fuel driven to mostly renewable driven with a nice balance and a gradual transition.
It's a great question. I think we've sailed too far as Drake goes. That's why I said I don't think it's efficient to go back in the process and say, hey, how can we keep it open? We can absolutely not shut down Nixon. We need that. And what I would say, too, as far as the utilities go, I talked with the CEO, like all of us did up here, and I said, what about that? What are you going to do with these solar panels and the wind turbines? I said, other cities, they're just going to bury them. And he goes, we'll figure it out in the meantime. We got 10 years to figure that out, and we'll find a way to recycle them. The batteries on the cars, you can just stack them up on another battery, and they'll keep working for a while longer, too. And I know he's got a lot more degrees than I do. He made that apparent to me. And I said, well, I just, come at it from a common sense point of view. I think Olivia brought up a great point, right? It's all fun because we're spending money and we're spending federal money. We got all these grants and everyone gets to hook each other up as far as the contractors go. But what we're not thinking about is what's going to happen in 10 years. No one wants to talk about that, and it should be addressed before we start putting all these wind and solar out there.
My sister lived in Texas. She lives in Texas. She was part of that. I want questions from, I'm going to ask you a question from District 1. I don't believe in renewable energy because of what it did and what I've seen it happen. What are your thoughts on that? I want to know where you stand on that, because I don't believe that we can sustain this society in this country without fossil fuel.
Well, Jim Mason, ma'am, you're absolutely correct. And this is why we're talking about diversification. You have to, in the complex physics of the world, you have to lean on all of the potential capabilities. And I think what we're all talking about is how do we mix and match those capabilities to have a sustainable, affordable energy into perpetuity? That's a very difficult question to answer. And one of the ways we're approaching it today is let's look at renewables while we have the fossil fuels. And that way we can better maintain our fossil fuel banks so that we don't ever get in a situation where we don't have what we need to survive as a race of people. God knows. I don't know when that will be.
So, District 1, you want to take on that? There's been so much energy stuff going on.
No worries. Yeah, it's 8:53, so I'll be conscious of everybody's time too. To be frank, I do believe in renewables, period. And I do not like the fact that this conversation has turned into, we have to be all coal or all renewable. As Jim said, diversification, just like your guys' retirement portfolios, is wildly important. You don't ever want to be too hedged towards one thing, whether it's coal, solar, wind, take your pick. Thankfully, our power grid here is interconnected with other power grids in other parts of the United States, which I think we've seen from the science and what Texas has said itself was not the case down there. And so I think it's important that the CSU continues in this leadership position while diversifying the portfolio. And I do think renewables need to take a bigger place of that picture.
Dave Donaldson, also in District 1. The answer is, I believe, to this, and I talked to Ron Benjamin about this, we have to have fossil fuel backup to cover any decline in our in the renewables, right? So when the windmill stops turning, we turn Nixon back on. And that's what we do with Birdsall right now. Birdsall power plant just off of Nevada. We only use it a few days out of the year, but those peak days we have to have it. So he understands that, right? And we talked about this. Colorado Springs can do what they call island. We can produce all the energy we need in Colorado Springs off of fossil fuels independently. We don't have to rely on the grid. We do it ourselves, okay? And he's on board with that. He described it to me, so hopefully that's reassuring for you.
Sorry, and we're only going to take 2 more questions. So unfortunately, these folks will be at their tables, and if we will give some time for them to talk to you directly.
Sorry about the confusion before. So we've seen Denver make us wear masks, close businesses, and discriminate against us. And I'm wondering, will you guys oppose a vaccine mandate or passport to enter local stores as is happening in liberal New York City? And what will you do as city council to provide protections for city residents to work and shop here without discrimination regarding taking the COVID vaccine? District 1.
So that was a long question, but I'll try to remember what I think you asked. And it's, will I state that I won't agree with a vaccine mandate? Is that correct? For shopping? Absolutely. Absolutely. If you want the vaccine, get the vaccine. If you don't want the vaccine, don't get the vaccine. And there was more, though, to it, wasn't there?
Will you, what will you do as city council to provide against discrimination regarding employment or shopping?
One question, sir.
About shop. Oh. Okay, well, we're kind of short for time, so that's my answer.
All right. Yeah, I think Dave and I are definitely aligned there. I would never impose any kind of vaccine mandate. I would hope everybody see the effectiveness and stay safe with everybody and wear masks and go get a vaccine if you feel like that's the right thing to do. But I would never mandate it.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, the first rule you learn in the military is never give an order you cannot enforce. Okay? No, the vaccine cannot be mandated. Now, there's a degree of responsibility goes with that as well. And you all know what it is, so I won't discuss it. Okay? Now, what should we do to address discrimination, I think was one of your questions. Well, since you won't walk around with a red V on your head or wherever, you won't know. I would assume if your money is green, if I'm a business owner, you come in and buy what you need to buy. You know? I don't think we have to worry about discrimination, and no one should be forced to take a vaccine if they do not want to.
Fake vaccination IDs. Starting a new business.
For the District 2 candidates, would you please address the wisdom and your position on injecting STRs, short-term rentals, into our local residential communities? Thank you.
Short-term rentals. I've had this happen in my neighborhood. I'm on the HOA board. So, first of all, I believe in our property rights, individual property rights. So, if the city is going, I think they have passed ordinances on short-term rentals. There's got to be enforcement, and we had to do that in my neighborhood. Just to give you an example, the owner left, moved to Arizona, and had it rented out as a short-term rental. The trash cans were never being put up. The backyard was left unattended, and we had to use legal to get him to come in and clean it up, fix it. He eventually sold it. So I have personal experience with that. On the other hand, it is America, and when we own something, can we use it for what we want to? Again, I believe the voters have a right to come forward and determine that. Thank you.
Short-term rentals
if that's your property and you're complying with the rules, it probably shouldn't be a problem. If you're not complying with the rules, as Randy was talking about, that's a problem. Bigger picture on the short-term rentals. Forcing that as a zoning issue or an infill issue, or as you start, however you start bending the language, that should be a conversation first with neighbors and property owners. The last thing we want is for any of this to be used to cause property values to drop, because that is stealing from property owners. Yes, they should be able to use their property how they want, but the other thing is they should not be able to abuse that.
David?
It is a very fragile balance between the two, because it is a land rights issue, but it's obviously the impact that it is to the surrounding neighbors, and we definitely understand that. We talk about the lack or the removal of code enforcement, but in this case, right, then all of a sudden we want that accountability. If we hold our HOAs accountable and we hold the rental agencies that the majority of these go through to establish a standard that they can hold the landowner to, we can balance that very fine line to make sure that there's accountability for the issues, because I get it. They use them for short weekend party houses, and it makes a tremendous negative impact to the remainder of the community, and that's definitely an issue. So if we hold VRBO, the other rental organizations that the majority of these run through, and the property management companies, we can in fact hold them accountable so that the behavior of the landowner is held accountable so that it could be properly managed, because I don't think we really want to step in and define what people can and cannot do with their private property.
Okay, short-term rentals, Johnny Manziel and Robert Gronkowski would like the address to your short-term rentals so they can come and have a grand party. All right, with that being said, it is now after 9. Please give all of our candidates a big hand, big round of applause. I want to thank you all for coming out ahead of Snowpocalypse, which is going to happen over the weekend, so they say. Please, if you have an opportunity, go ahead and meet them at their tables. Get an opportunity to talk with them, ask them your individual questions. We're going to let that go until about 9:30, and then I'm going to make sure everybody gets out of the building. 9:30, then you got to go. Have a great evening.